But unlike the guy who doesn't want to wrap his pipes, and if he's made to, he's probably going to try to charge you more. I'm sending out that bid that apparently is significantly more than my, competitors.
Yeah.
But I'm certain that theirs aren't going to be as fully complete as mine. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Make Trades Great Again podcast. Andy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Voice is coming back a little bit.
Sounded better. Face hasn't
Do you
improved
remember
much,
that?
but
What's that?
I said face hasn't improved much.
Thanks. Well, that brings me to the next thing. I should do a little housekeeping like we have recently. Andy's commenting on my face. Well, that means he can see me. And if you want to see me too, you can also see Andy. Go head over to the YouTube channel for Mechanical Hub. And right there, you'll find the Make Trades Great Again podcast videos. And you can watch us every week. It's beautiful.
It's a thing.
See Andy's cool office background, and then you can see my bluish gray wall with a YouTube plaque on it. I like it. That's all I got. I got nothing fun to look at.
I was just noticing in mine, I look like I have like way too much stuff over here. I need to.
Looks like you need to clean up that office a little bit there, pal.
I know.
Look at all that webstone stacking up back behind you. You better use it. They sent out a cool like a boiler header the other day. Did you see that? Primary, secondary thing?
I think it's actually sitting in right there.
That is a nice product. I haven't used it yet, but I already know where I can.
Yeah.
Speaking of boiler headers, well, I don't know how I'm going to segue from that, but anyway, somewhat related adjacent to boilers.
Okay.
I just installed some radiant tubing
in
a job last week. You probably saw, I know you did, saw some video from it. And this is a job. Okay, so last week would have been the week of what? Give me a time frame. Week of April 21.
Easter.
Yeah, week after Easter. Third week in April.
Yeah.
Okay, that's significant to what I'm going to say next. This is a job that I talked about in a podcast last fall. You might remember. I don't remember the exact date. I think it was in November. And I said in that podcast, like, hey, I'm going to quit doing these jobs where I start, or I take a call from a homeowner who's generally in their own project.
Right.
Because they just seem to go on forever. Right. And this was last fall we were talking about. Hey, you know what? I wonder if we were just talking about it at the beginning of the year or something like that. But anyway,
maybe I remember talking.
And so I made this proclamation. And as I tell you about this, I think like I didn't even take my own advice because I've been talking to like 4 different people right now via email and phone calls that want me to work on their projects that they're also generaling. So I'm entertaining more of these jobs apparently because I'm just a glutton for punishment. But this is a job I started the week after Easter 2025, but I sent the estimate. According to House Call Pro, I created the estimate in my system July 15th, 2024. Oh my gosh. This job sat, excuse me, as a shell of a post frame building from, it got cold early here, October, let's say. It sat because we couldn't hit, maybe it was November, we couldn't get concrete in and everything done before it got too cold without doing heat and stuff. And I don't think they were capable of pulling that off. And so timing, as it kind of unfolded, forced this job to just sit.
Right.
Because in a post frame building, you can't do anything. Once a shell is up, you got to have a floor, right? You can't just start building walls and stuff because there's nothing to set them on.
Right.
And so we're in limbo, or I shouldn't say we. I got a deposit for my, basically like 25% of the job because I'm looking at it kind of rough in finish kind of scenario with the tubing.
Yep.
And so I got that deposit. Boiler's sitting in my shop since like September.
Right.
The tubing and manifold were sitting in there. Do you know how much space just that takes up?
It's a pain.
In your shop for one single little job. It's only like 2,500 square feet. It's not like a ton, right?
Yeah.
And here I am just storing stuff like I'm freaking Ferguson. Like we got North End distribution here for Ani Plumbing.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to bitch about this job. That's not why I brought it up. I brought it up really because, and we've kind of covered that subject, working for others and stuff like that. But I bring it up because I just started working on this job again, and there's these other subcontractors there.
Right.
And I don't think any of them listen to this podcast. So we're probably safe. I don't care. I got thick skin. I can take it. I feel like because I'm not doing the plumbing, I'm just doing the radiant heating and the water heater with the boiler.
Yeah.
There's a plumber on site, and I talk to him, and I get this feeling like, and I look at the work, and I'm about to put tubing down, and he was there, just got his plumbing rough-in inspection. We do an air test here. It's all just groundwork. It's
right.
Small groundwork, bathroom, kitchen, floor drain. And I said, do you need to, he's about ready to leave. And I'm like, do you need to wrap those pipes where they're going through the concrete? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Cell phone.
Protect it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't say anything. I'm like, wait, you don't do that? What do you mean? Like, that's just, they're like, that's the thing in the code we refuse to do. You know what I mean? Like
we're just not going there.
Yeah, we're not going there. I'm like, wait, that's where you draw the line in the sand? Some plastic. And I'm like, huh, okay. I'm like, and then I just couldn't let it go, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, a couple seconds later, I'm like, doesn't the inspector make you do, like, every time I do the groundwork, I'm like, it's like one of the things they tell me because I forget to do it.
Right.
I forget to do it until I'm like walking out the door. I'm like, we gotta wrap those pipes.
Yeah. Let me go buy a 200-foot roll of sill foam, and I need 11 and a half inches.
Yeah. 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 And like, that's a convenient product to have rolling around on your plumbing service van.
Right.
It only takes up 14 cubic feet,
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we should go back. So I don't think maybe not everybody knows what we're talking about. So where our drain waste and vent pipes come up through concrete, that will pass through the concrete. The building code says we're supposed to protect that pipe from damage of the two different surfaces because of like expansion and contraction.
Yep.
And sealing around the pipe, that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Like that's the gist of it. Am I
Yeah.
leaving anything out?
No. It's really simple. You take two wraps of sill foam and a wrap of duct tape. Poop, done.
But even when I was coming up, this was a thing, right?
Yeah.
But I never did it. It wasn't enforced until like 2015.
Yeah.
Like, think about that.
Right. I've done it my entire career.
Right.
So
that's
why it was required at some point.
Yeah. It was the same. I mean, it seems like our adoption of codes and stuff seems to be basically the same timing as yours.
Right.
And so, we have the same code, different versions, right? Like I have the Minnesota version of your same plumbing code and whatnot.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to anybody, good for you. And if it doesn't make any sense to anybody, yeah, we're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
Trust us. We don't think it makes sense either. But anyway, he's like, yeah, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, wait, don't they make you, like every time I do it and they call me out on it. And the guy was just like, yeah, we only do it if we're asked. I'm like, that is, there's a reason behind this guy saying like, we only do it if we're asked or told to, like certain inspectors that was his response. Right. And like you brought up, you talk about this foam sill seal. So it's like what, maybe 5-6 inches. It's 6 inches.
6 inches.
Because it goes under a 2x6.
Yep.
A 6-inch piece of this flat foam comes in a roll.
It's 1/8 inch thick or something. Yeah.
What's that?
It's like 1/8 of an inch thick.
Yeah. The foam stuff. Yeah. And it costs relatively nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Like you said, basically there's a piece of duct tape and the foot of this stuff involved for every pipe, and it doesn't take much time at all on a small job. Obviously, either way, it should be figured into the job.
It's like saying we don't put hangers on our pipe.
Yeah, it's like, well, I skip every third hanger so I can put 25 cents in my pocket.
Right.
My point is that the long way to get to this point. Of course, I'm long-winded. Everybody listening to the podcast knows that, but I walked away from that, not thinking about this all day or anything, but just a couple times that day, I'm like, and then since I'm like, this guy is so cheap that sill foaming, like wrapping the pipes is like something he's only willing to do when it's
required.
demanded of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except the code says it's supposed to be done. And he's my competition.
Yeah.
Like that's why I'm so like hung up on this wrapping pipes thing.
Yeah.
Is like, I'm out there competing against guys that are like, no, we're not losing any money on this job. We're pricing it so poorly that we can't even afford to put wrap around our pipes unless we're told. And then, God, then we don't make any money on that job. That's I know I'm overshooting here, but like, come on.
Well, I guess, when you run into that kind of thing and I look at it and go, well, what? Okay. So that's like a glaring out in the open, obvious thing that he's like, we're not doing that. And my next question to that is, well, what things are not being done that are not obvious?
Yeah.
Right. Is this, well, Santees are less expensive than Wise, so we're going to put Santees on their back in the drainage because they're, 8 cents cheaper, 10 cents, 25 cents cheaper? I mean, is that where you start? Where do the other corners get cut? It
gets cut in how they treat their employees and how they rush through the job and how they do literally, if it's not those things, like you're saying, if it's not I can't see what else might be wonky with this job, it's at least like bidding it with the absolute minimum.
Yeah.
Like no extras, like it, quality and satisfaction be damned. We're going to do this and only this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a strange one. You just go, well, all right. Of all the things you could cut, you eliminated the least expensive one.
Well, I guess it got me thinking too, like if these people are your competition, right?
Right.
The reality is they're likely going to get hired when their price shows up as the lowest. They're more likely to be getting a call back like, hey, we want to talk to you about this job. I think we're going to move forward with you. And then when you're, the more higher contractor who bid everything that was needed for that job because you've done it 100 times, you're like, I'm just going to put it all in there. You're worrying less about being the low bid, but being an appropriate cost for you're covering your costs. You're doing it the right way. You're including everything, which makes you more expensive.
Yep.
And I just think like that's what bothers me the most is I just recently got I was told by a potential customer wanting to build his last house. He's a home builder, wants radiant heating. I told him I'm not going to do the plumbing. I'll do the radiant system. I'll give you a bid for it.
Yeah. And
then I was told in response to my follow-up, like, hey, you're significantly more expensive than everybody else. And I'm like, well, can we talk about it? And so I could plead my case, which I did in an email when I was basically told like, yeah, I'm not interested in talking to you, that my price is one price. Right. And you and I have talked about this many times, but unlike the guy who doesn't want to wrap his pipes and if he's made to, he's probably going to try to charge you more. I'm sending out that bid that apparently is significantly more than my, competitors.
Yeah.
But I'm certain that theirs aren't going to be as fully complete as mine. And if they are, then good. And maybe they're using lower cost equipment. Maybe they're just not making the same profit margin.
Right. Well,
these people are our competition.
Yeah. I think that's, we talked about, I don't know, it was last week or week before. One of the last couple episodes was about having your price be an all inclusive, and being comfortable with that and looking at it and going, well, you know what, there could be mistakes on the job, right? There may be things that I've overlooked or omitted, and that's not in every case is that something that I'm going to be like, oh, that's a change order, right?
Right.
We're going to go get some more money for that. Now there are certain business models where that's the name of the game is to come in and be the lowest price to get the job, and then come back at them and say, well, there's this and that and the other that, find these plan discrepancies and, RFIs that are going to require additional work. And you're going to make up your loss on with that. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are really good at it.
Right.
I have a hard time with it just because I'm kind of like, well, I gave you a price. I told you I'd do it for this amount. And they didn't really put an exclusion in there that said, unless I find some stuff that I decided I didn't want to do. Right. you know,
Oh, I know. I
you
know.
know,
Yeah, we did
so
talk about that, and like basically you can't see behind a wall, but more or less
yeah,
the price they quoted you is going to be what you end up getting billed in the
yeah.
end, right?
Well, I
I
was just chatting with, my former employer, new owner, guy that I did my apprenticeship with, and we've been chatting quite a bit here recently, about different projects. And well, so he was talking about a job, similar deal, bids this chiller at the university, right? So pretty
uh-huh.
good sized chiller. I don't know, it was 30-ton or something like that. It's big, pretty good sized unit. And he goes, I got beat on this job, like insane beat. Right? Like he goes, it's like a $275,000 job to do this chiller swap out. He goes, there's not a lot of piping. He goes, I figured there's probably 2 days worth of piping, and it's all 8-inch or something like that, welded steel. And he goes, so there's time, labor involved in that. He goes,
Yeah.
but literally, the contractor that got the job, he said the chiller was like 108,000 of the part. Like he goes, cost was that, and he goes, it's a specified unit, so everybody's getting the same chiller, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no alternate. There's just, this is the chiller that's going in here, and you're getting
Yeah.
it from this vendor, right?
So
And
theoretically everybody's paying the same price.
everybody should be paying within reason the same
Yeah.
price, right? And he goes, my price, was whatever. And he goes, I had all the labor and the insulation and electrical and all this stuff figured in for it. And he goes, the guy that got the job was like $24,000 over the cost of the chiller.
No.
Yeah. And he goes, I have no clue. Like, and the university's like, well, I mean, we got to take low bid because we're,
By 120, $130,000
yeah,
low bid?
yeah. He goes, they're like 40% low. And he's like, they must have forgot like the rest of the job. Like you weren't just bidding to
What?
buy. Yeah. And he goes, I don't know. So he goes, it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out,
That's wild.
and they're aware of it, right? They're aware that of the disparity between the two price, the high and the low. And uh, Corey wasn't the high. I don't think he was the high number. I think there was another number that was higher than he was.
In jobs like those like those big, like, do help me understand this. Maybe maybe you
Yeah.
don't. Do you get to see what the other companies are bidding?
When the bids are open, I think when they open the bids, usually I think it's usually the architect or the engineer who's doing the project management. You submit your pricing to that company, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're not necessarily submitting it to the owner. You're submitting it to I think it's typically the architect. Um, and the architect opens all the bids on whatever the bid day is, right? And then they announce the the list and then present that to the owner, and then the owner gets to have final selection if they're like, hey, this isn't right, we're going to do this, or and even on a commercial plan and spec bid, you may find various things where one company's got you know I'm trying to think, if one company isn't able to do preventative maintenance down the road, right? That's one place where companies can go in and say, well, and we will, we can offer this, and we'll do some discounted preventative maintenance down the road. You could offer that in addition to the spec work to help incentivize. Usually, I mean, the whole idea behind plan and spec is that everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Which somehow gets lost in translation. I don't know, because it's sometimes you're like,
because then you get people that are doing it for 100 grand less. Yeah.
And
on
that's
a 200 grand job.
Yeah. So
yeah, I don't know. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I also don't want to make it sound like I'm just now realizing these kind of contractors are our competition. I'm not. That'd be silly to think that. But to just be with them on the job sites is rare for me.
Yeah.
At the very least. Right.
Well, and I think it's important to know too. I mean, and that may be not necessarily the norm for the company, right? It may be your interaction. Maybe that guy's like, nah, whatever. I don't do.
Well, this was the owner, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I know what you're saying though. Yeah. In another scenario,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I'm not trying to say everybody's bad either.
Right. Yeah.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I should throw those kind of qualifications out there, because if you don't know me like Andy knows me and we're talking, I mean, you don't hear us when we talk before we hit record, like, look, I'm not one to go around complaining about other contractors in my area. I'm not one saying these guys are, making my job harder. They should be keeping us all honest. We should keep each other honest. Right. Yeah. And when you run into somebody that comes in and starts underbidding stuff, you gotta look at what you're doing. And if you've kind of figured out that, no, what you're doing is right, and they're just somehow doing it for nothing, you know what I mean? There's a lot of contractors. I see it too. We were absolutely the same way, or we were this way that I'll say next, is that when we started out, we were doing a lot of things that you could kind of sum up by saying like for wages, basically, right?
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we should charge, that kind of thing. And I wonder if, after talking to this guy more about different things, if in fact, like, there's a little bit of that, like, because he's about 3 years into running the business, seems as though it, like, the way he talks, it's almost as if he's still figuring it out, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like I'm any better than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I am. I shouldn't have to make that. I shouldn't have to clarify that.
Sure. We shouldn't have to disclose that,
Yeah, come on, guys. You know me. All right, let's wrap it. I think this is a job that's going to be interesting.
So how did your tubing install went off without a hitch?
Went fine.
Got your inspection?
Yeah, went fine. Yep, inspection was good. That was the first inspection I've had in the longest time they didn't have to be there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I asked. I'm like, do you need me there? It's just an air test. I can, but I can meet them there. And they're like, nope, it's good. Just make sure it's on for 24 hours. Take it. And I'm like, cool.
Yeah. When are they getting concrete coming soon?
They poured it the next day. This was last week. I got inspection on Thursday, and they poured it on Friday.
Nice.
Air test on both manifolds. I pump them up. Going off of our conversation, you and I, you'd ask, like, what do you pump those up to? And I said, I don't know, like 60. Doesn't really matter. I mean, the inspector's always good just to see that it doesn't leak.
Right.
And we leave the air on during the pour. And you said you have to go, your inspectors are demanding 100 PSI on a 200 PSI gauge. So it's in the middle. And so going off that, and I was like, well, that's not something I've ever been told, but, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Also, you're not arguing. You're just saying, like, can you believe this? Like, whatever, we're doing it.
Right. I've never.
I did the same thing. I have a 160 PSI gauges.
Sure.
And so I did 80.
Yeah.
Which, 160, 80. Yeah. Half.
Something like that. Yeah.
And 80 PSI in a radiant system is
10 times its
if
normal
it's going to leak,
pressure.
it's going to leak before 80.
Right.
But
yeah.
So, everything went fine. Tubing was poured. Concrete guys were impressed. They're like, oh, you did a nice job on this tubing. I'm like, I just do the tubing install. I wouldn't, thanks, I guess, if that's a compliment. But honestly, if you're not doing at least what I did here, then you're not doing a nice job. So,
Right. Rob went out and thermal scanned Keller Supply's opening an air division, which will be kind of nice. So second branch here locally.
oh, so you'll have a better supply of
Yep.
sheet metal and stuff like
Yep.
that and furnaces.
Yeah, they're for size. Their current location is too small to carry all
I
the
gotcha.
air and
Okay,
the plumbing.
Yeah.
And then so it'll be air and fire. So they'll do all their plumbing at the existing location, and then HVAC and fire suppression at the other location. And so Rob, I'd gone out like, I don't know, 4 months ago to look at this space when they were buying it and make sure the boiler was ready to go. It was like right at the beginning of winter. And
Yeah.
they're like, we're going to put all this metal racking, like pallet racking in these shop bays. Well, it's got radiant floor heat.
Oh, and they got to
bolt it down.
attach them to the floor.
Yeah. And so Brandon was like, can you go out and do a thermal scan and then mark out where the tubing's at? So I go out there and I'm looking, I got the heat turned up and I'm looking at it, and I'm standing on this mezzanine with my thermal camera and I'm looking down there and I'm like, there's no freaking way. Like
What?
the tubing changes directions at least 3 times where it's going like this way and then it's this way. And then it's like,
Yeah. And you're able to pick it up even.
Oh yeah. I could see it right through it. It's probably a 6-inch slab, but I could see that, like here's these lines, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way to mark this out. Like, I mean, I can. It's
reliably.
It's going to take
you forever.
freaking ever, because it's, I don't know, it's probably that section of the building's probably 3,000 feet, square foot.
Oh my God.
It's a big space. And so I'm like, let's do this different. Can you guys come lay out or just chalk line where your pallet racking is going to go, like in a row, like this is the feet. And then I can mark every point where the tubing intersects that. And then you can see if you can't lay it out. And he's like, yeah. So anyway, fast forward, 3 months or whatever, and pallet racking is there. And the contractor put all the racking together and the first tier of it so that we could just sit it on the ground, and they can just shove it around with the forklift and move it as needed. And so Rob goes out there and he's looking at it, and he's like, literally every foot, like every other leg is on tubing.
Yeah.
And he goes, and it doesn't matter.
How far down is the tubing?
Who knows? I mean, you can see it in the thermal scan. So it's got to be, a couple inches. And I don't know. I assume it's a 6-inch slab. It's a commercial space, but, it's got a big, a couple of big overhead doors and stuff like that. So I would guess it's a 6-inch slab, but
I wonder if it's at the bottom of the slab though.
It'd be cool if it was, but it's just,
but
like,
you don't know.
But this goes on to that thing, like where you're talking, like, your nice, even, 12-inch spacing is, or whatever you were at, 9-inch, whatever.
Yep.
You just look at it and go, it's really easy to follow. And if I ever have to lay anything out in the future, I could literally lay out my stud wall based on tube spacing, right? Like,
sure,
I know where it's at. And this is like it's squiggly in between the bends on the ends. And then you get out to the bend and it's like a 3-foot radius bulb, big loopy loop out on the end. And I'm just like, what?
Terrible. Is it like 5/8 to 3/4 or something like that?
No, it's all to 1/2 inch. But there's like this one zone that's that bay. I think it's a big manifold. It's got to have 10 circuits or something like that, and I'm just like, God dang it. And like I say, then it changes direction 3 times, where one chunk of it's like going this way, where it goes up against this trench drain. And then as soon as they got past the trench drain, instead of continuing that same pattern, they switched 90 degrees. And then they got to the corner of the building and then switched 90 degrees again. I'm like, because it's kind of a big L shape. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you.
That's super lame.
So
low bid.
yeah, guessing.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Check us out over on YouTube, like we said, and you can send us a rating in your podcast app. We'd appreciate it. Andy, they can get a hold of us an email too. What is that one?
Get us at the make trades great again at gmail.com.
There you go. That's it, buddy. I'm out.
Okay. Have a good one.